Have you ever felt jealous of someone else's success? Maybe a sibling got praised for something you worked just as hard on. Maybe a friend's life seems to be falling into place while yours feels like it's falling apart. Jealousy. Something we've all faced, right? Well, today we're diving into one of the earliest stories of jealousy, anger, and ultimately, redemption. It's the story of Cain and Abel, two brothers who wouldn't have been more different, but who shared a bond that was tragically broken. Stick around, because this isn't just a story about two brothers. It's a story about us, about the choices we make when we feel life isn't fair, and how we can find hope even when we mess up. Let's start at the beginning. Cain and Abel were the sons of Adam and Eve, the very first humans. Talk about a lot to live up to, right? Cain, the older brother, was a farmer. He worked the soil, planting and harvesting crops. Abel, on the other hand, was a shepherd, tending to flocks of sheep. Now, back in those days, people would bring offerings to God as a way to honor Him and say thank you. Think of it like giving your best friend a gift to show you care. Cain brought an offering from the crops he had grown, a mix of fruits and grains. Abel, however, brought the best lamb from his flock. Not just any lamb, the best. When the time came to present their offerings, something surprising happened. God accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's. Now let's pause here. Imagine how Cain must have felt. He worked hard for his crops, just like Abel worked hard for his sheep. But while Abel's offering was celebrated, Cain's wasn't. Probably felt like a slap in the face. So why did God accept one offering and not the other? The Bible tells us that Abel gave with a heart full of faith and gratitude, while Cain's offering was more about duty than devotion. In other words, it wasn't about what they gave, it was about why they gave it. God saw that Cain was angry, furious even. And here's the amazing part. God didn't just leave Cain to stew in his emotions. He spoke to him saying, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what's right, won't you be accepted? But if you don't, sin's crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." Think about that. God wasn't punishing Cain. He was warning him. He was saying, hey, I see you're upset, but be careful. Don't let your anger control you. But Cain didn't listen. Instead, he let his anger grow, and that anger turned into jealousy. And that jealousy turned into something worse. One day, Cain invited Abel to the field. What happened next was unthinkable. In a moment of rage, Cain attacked his brother and killed him. Let that sink in. This wasn't just a sibling fight or a heated argument. This was the first murder in human history, and it all started with jealousy. Afterward, God asked Cain, "Where's your brother Abel?" And Cain's response, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" That question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" has echoed through history, and it's the question at the heart of this story. Are we responsible for one another? God already knew what Cain had done, and He confronted him. He said, "Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Cain's actions couldn't be hidden, and they had consequences. God told Cain that the ground he had worked so hard to cultivate would no longer yield crops for him. He would become a restless wanderer. Cain's punishment wasn't just about the act of murder, it was about the broken relationship. His sin had not only separated him from Abel, but also from God. But here's where the story takes a surprising turn. Even though Cain had done something terrible, God didn't abandon him. When Cain cried out, afraid that others would harm him, God marked him with a sign of protection. He still cared for Cain, even after what he had done. So what does this story mean for us today? Let's break it down, because there's a lot we can learn from Cain and Abel. Lesson 1, jealousy is powerful and dangerous. Jealousy is something we all experience at some point in life. It's that unsettling feeling when someone else gets the recognition we wanted, when a friend succeeds while we struggle, or when we feel overlooked and underappreciated. At its core, jealousy is more than just wanting what someone else has. It's the belief that we deserve it more than they do. Cain's story is a warning about what happens when jealousy is left unchecked. Instead of dealing with his emotions in a healthy way, Cain let jealousy consume him, leading him to commit the first murder in human history. Jealousy rarely stays small. It starts as a thought, why them and not me? But if we don't address it, it festers. It turns into resentment, anger, and eventually bitterness. Cain didn't wake up one day and decide to kill Abel. His emotions built up over time, fueled by his refusal to deal with disappointment in a healthy way. We all have these moments, times when we feel envy creeping in, when we sense anger arising, when we have a choice to let go or let it take control. The question is, will we listen to the warning? So how do we overcome jealousy? Number 1, acknowledge it. The first step is being honest. When we feel jealous, we need to recognize it and ask ourselves why we feel this way. What insecurity is it revealing? What fear is behind it? Number 2, shift your perspective. Instead of seeing someone else's success as a threat, what if we saw it as proof that blessings are possible? Celebrating others opens the door for our own growth. Number 3, trust God's timing. God's plan for you is unique. Just because someone else receives something first doesn't mean you never will. Cain could have trusted that God saw his heart and would bless him in his own time. Instead, he let comparison rob him of peace. Number 4, respond with gratitude. When we focus on what we do have rather than what we lack, jealousy loses its power. Gratitude shifts our hearts from resentment to contentment. Number 2, it's not just about what we give, it's about why we give. At first glance, it seems unfair that God accepted Abel's offering but not Cain's. After all, Cain still brought something. Shouldn't that have been enough? But the story isn't just about the offering itself. It's about the heart behind it. The difference between Cain and Abel's offerings, the Bible tells us that Abel brought the firstborn of his flock, the best, Genesis 4:4. Cain, however, simply brought some of the fruits of the soil, Genesis 4:3. The key difference is intent. This reveals an important truth. God isn't just interested in what we give, He's interested in why we give it. Giving with the right heart. The principle applies to every area of life. Worship. Do we go to church or pray just out of obligation, or do we truly seek God? Serving others. Do we help people because we want to or because we feel like we have to? Relationships. Do we give our time and love freely, or do we expect something in return? God doesn't want empty gestures. He wants a relationship with us, one built on love, not just routine. Lesson number 3, we are our brother's keeper. One of the most haunting lines in this story is Cain's response to God after Abel's murder. Am I my brother's keeper? Genesis 4:9. This question isn't just for Cain. It's for all of us. Are we responsible for one another? The answer, according to God, is yes. Our actions affect others. Cain's sin didn't just impact him. It took Abel's life. It separated Cain from God. It brought suffering and consequences that extended far beyond just himself. The same is true for us. The way we treat others, the words we say, the actions we take, has a ripple effect. Our choices either build up or tear down. So what does it mean to be our brother's keeper? 1, looking out for others. We have a responsibility to care for those around us. This means standing up for justice, helping those in need, and being there for one another. Number 2, choosing love over anger. Cain let his anger lead him to hatred. We have a choice to respond differently, to choose forgiveness, patience, and kindness. Number 3, recognizing our influence. Our actions don't exist in a vacuum. The way we treat people affects their lives and our own. The final lesson, there's still hope. Cain's story could have ended in complete destruction. He made a terrible choice and he faced the consequences. But here's the surprising part. God didn't abandon him. When Cain cried out, afraid of what others would do to him, God placed a mark of protection on him. Genesis 4:15. Even after Cain's worst mistake, God still showed him mercy. This is a powerful reminder that God's grace is bigger than our failures. No matter how far we fall, no matter how much we mess up, God doesn't give up on us. There's always a path to redemption, if we're willing to take it. Cain had a chance to choose a different path before his anger consumed him, and even after his sin, he had a chance to seek God's mercy. We have that same choice. But most importantly, even when we fail, God's grace remains. No matter how far we've fallen, there's always a way back. So the next time jealousy, anger, or resentment starts to creep in, remember Cain and Abel and choose a different path. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need a reminder about the power of forgiveness and the hope of redemption. Until next time, take care and choose wisely.